on Monday of this week ran for the second time in the Boston Marathon. She finished her race in 3 hours and 30 minutes, which is a mighty good time. I ran a half marathon once and I finished in 3 hours and 30 minutes. I was really grateful that she stopped to pee along the way, because that added some time to her marathon. Because 11 minutes later, 11 minutes after she crossed that finish line, that first explosion went off. It was amazing as people scrambled to try to find out if she was okay, because we heard that went off before we knew she finished. And if you've been looking for any tragedy to happen in the world this week, you haven't had to look very far. I mean, seriously. It's just kept coming in and coming in and coming in. In Boston, in Texas, the substance in letters mailed to DC, the avalanche killing snowboarders in Colorado, drownings in the Chesapeake Bay, flash flooding in Indiana, killing residents, the earthquake in China killing 200 people. I mean, my heart's quickening even just to mention this litany of things. One day I got so disheartened with it all this week that I turned on the Brady Bunch. I needed a break. A friend of mine got a text message this week that said something like, "Dude, this world is really screwed up." But those weren't the exact words in the text message. Times are hard for sure. But I also believe that every age has had some hard times. Those things happened this week. Last week was a hard week too, for some people who were really close to me. One of my dear friends and colleagues in ministry had a horrible week. A week unlike any other. He was in a car accident. His car hit a jogger. She was med-flighted to the hospital. Later, she was pronounced dead. My colleague was intoxicated. He spent several days in jail and is now in an inpatient treatment facility. Breaks my heart. There's a lot of pastors who have addiction issues. That breaks my heart. Times are hard, for sure. People deal with demons all the time. Only sometimes do those demons come into the light where they can get help. Times are hard, for sure. I remember when I was in college, which was not yesterday, people saying then, I don't think I'd want to have kids these days. It's so hard. People today have to deal with so much more than people had to deal with when I was a kid. But I think people have said that all through the ages. And I think that when Jesus was born into this world 2,000 years ago, that the world wasn't a real easy, party, fairy tale kind of world then. People have always dealt with hard times. People have always had broken hearts. People have always dealt with difficult issues. People have always dealt with substance abuse and with violence at home. And they've always dealt with horrible accidents, with devastating acts of nature, which sometimes get called acts of God. I'm waiting for insurance companies to call that something different. People have always dealt with hard hearts. People have always dealt with hard times. And I think that Christmas happened because God didn't want to be far off. God wanted to be close up. And so God said, I know. I'll come as one of them. I'll come as a baby. I'll come as someone little Emily's size. If you don't mind holding up Emily for a second. How many days old is Emily now?
She's 5 weeks.
5 weeks. So God came as smaller than Emily. And God said, I'm going to walk in this world the way that they do. And I'm going to grow up in this world the way that they do. And people might have said then, oh yeah, this is no world to raise a child in. But God said, yeah, it really is. Because this is my world. This is my universe. And I made it this way. And beautiful things will happen, and terrible things will happen. And I will be with them. I will walk with them. And I will love them through all of it. So imagine a house where Jesus has begun his ministry, and he has gathered people around, and he's going to teach them about this relentless love, this love that happens in this broken world. This world where sometimes children have to grow up in orphanages. This world where sometimes people's lives are ruled by substance abuse. This world where people die too soon. This world where cancer comes to live. This world where people are lost and they're afraid they're never going to be found. This world, Jesus comes to teach about where love lives and where love is going to be real. And so many people want to hear what that's like, that there's a crowd around the house. But people have heard that this man is here in their town and he can heal, and they have a friend who's paralyzed. And they say, maybe, just maybe, this is going to be our day. Maybe this is going to be our day that this man can be healed. And so let's take this man, let's get that mat. We're like, oh wow, where did we put that? Okay, let's get him on a mat, and let's get him to Jesus, and we'll just take him right up to him. And they get there, and there's a crowd around the house, and everybody wants a front row, so they can't get him in. You know those crowded concerts, and you can't get in, like, oh, how are we going to get him in? Oh, I know, we'll take him up on the roof, and we'll let him down. And so they get up on the roof, and they find a way to, like, deconstruct this guy's house. Like, really? I always want to know, like, what happens the day after Jesus goes somewhere. The rest of the story. And they let this paralyzed man down through the roof. And Jesus says, your faith has made you well. The paralyzed man. Now, I'm guessing the paralyzed man had nothing to do with getting to Jesus. But look who got him there. It was his friends. So when Jesus says, your faith has made you well, he's talking about the faith of those friends, the faith of that community. Your faith has made you well. In Greek, that verb, or that oh darn it, the word for the you, what is that? The pronoun, thank you. The pronoun for the you, your faith, it's confusing between if it's plural or if it's singular. So your faith, plural, has made you singular well, but you, singular, also works for plural. So the faith of the group of you has made you singular as well as plural well. You're working together as a family. You together are well. And that man gets up, takes up his mat, pulls it up, tucks it under his arm like a yoga mat. You know, you see those people walk around with their yoga. And just marks on, excuse me. Those same people who wouldn't let him in, they step back in awe, and they let him out so he can go back home and talk about this amazing thing that had happened. And they all start talking about it. Something amazing has happened there. It's incredible. Your faith has made you well because they work together. They don't wallow in the tragedy of the horrible thing that has happened. But not all of them. Some say, whoa, do you have any business making this guy well? Who are you to make him well? Let's see your credentials. I'm going to Google you and see if you're allowed to do what you've just done. And they start asking questions. And is it really okay that you've done what you've done? Are you really allowed to announce that the Lord's presence and sins are forgiven? Who are you to proclaim sins? And Jesus says, really? A man got up and walked from here? I'm talking about love and healing and grace and forgiveness, and you've seen a miracle and you're asking. And rather than shame them, Jesus keeps on teaching. He just thinks my work here isn't yet done. A lot of those marathon runners weren't as swift on their feet as my friend, who was able to finish her race. Their race was cut short. So they weren't able to do what they had gone there to do, which is a real tragedy. You know, it's the other explosion of that day. Because nobody trains for months or years to do a marathon to have it be cut short. They train, they get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they run these ridiculous distances. Remember I said I'd done half marathons. They run these ridiculous distances so that they can shine that day. So that they can put in their scrapbook of life that they ran a marathon. That's an incredible, beautiful accomplishment. No one wants that cut short. That was the other piece of terror that was planted on Monday. What Jesus told the people in that house is not to let their faith marathon be cut short. Faith isn't a sprint. When a tragedy happens, Jesus doesn't want us to throw it all away, ditch it on the side of the road. We get trained for a marathon, the marathon of life, when we come and hear the word and share in the sacrament. We aren't born again just once, and then it's said and done. We're born again every single day, Martin Luther taught. Every day when we wake up, we are born again with a chance to remember our baptism and to walk forward in this world. The temptation is to stop striving forward. The temptation is to wallow in the brokenness and the heartache and the hardship that surrounds us. The brokenness is to watch the news, the bad news of the world, and to forget that there's beautiful things that happen in the world all the time, like tulips. And like God really does soften hearts every day. The news might not report it, but there's a lot more love that happens than pain and brokenness in this world of ours. I got to have dinner with Vicki Taylor the other night, and she shared with me a story about her husband, Tim, who's a retired firefighter. He retired about 2 years ago. And one of the things that Vicki shared with me is a story. Vicki was invited to go into New York after 9/11 to train firefighters and to train them for dealing with this incredible mass tragedy. And I know some others of you have done that kind of work here. Glad you're here today to hear this because I'm very familiar to you, John. But as before they went, Vicki was advised, you know, you don't want to bring like your Chevrolet here because you're not going to be able to get through the city driving in a regular civilian's car. So bring some kind of rescue squad or fire truck or something when you come up because the streets are pretty well on lockdown for anybody who's not in some kind of emergency vehicle. She said, okay, that's fine, but our team doesn't really drive a lot of these rescue vehicles. So she asked her husband to come along. And so her husband, the firefighter, said, yes, I'll be happy to do that. And so they all got into a fire truck, right? Suburban, yeah. Oh, okay. And so, you know, had their, you know, everything going, set how they needed, and they drove to New York, and they were just about to drive into the city, and they were just talking along the way. And before they drove into where they were going to see the destruction, and just remember the pictures from 9/11 in your head. Before they drove into where they were going to see those, Tim said to the people who were in the car, I think we should take a minute to think about what we're going to see. Now remember, we all saw a whole lot. And Vicki said the question that I think a lot of spouses have said to spouses through the years. What do you mean? And he said, well, I think we should think about what we're going to see. Because if we expect that we're going to see death and destruction and pain and heartache and hardship and agony and distress, then surely that's what we're going to see when we drive into the city. But if we expect that we're going to see hope and survival and love and people taking risks of faith, and if we expect that we're going to see healing, and if we are going to see people building bridges, and if we expect that we are going to see faith in action, then that's what we're going to see. So let's remember why we're going. We're going to see hope. We're going to train people to share hope. We're going to bring healing. So I think we should decide now if we are going to see healing when we pull into the city. And Vicki shared with me at that moment, they decided, yeah, we're going to look for the hope. We're going to look for healing. And Vicki also said that that changed everything about what they saw during their time in New York City in those first hours and days after 9/11. We get to be God's people, and we get to proclaim hope and faith in this world. That's what we do as a family of Christ. Someone said, there certainly can't be a God in a world where all this kind of tragedy happens. And someone else said, no, that's not true. The world just needs more God so that we can keep this kind of tragedy. So let's be church. Not just talk about it, not just keep it to ourselves, but let's be the faith-filled people that we're called to be. Let's gear up to do the marathon and look for hope and look for the good things and proclaim love and life. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, and I know that our hearts hurt sometimes, but it's not only hard, because we have a God who loves us. And we have a God who loves everybody, and we get to be part of this incredible family that proclaims hope and light. And frankly, there's no family that I would rather be part of.
Stand on your feet and sing this with us. Light of the world. Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes that we see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, King of to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're all together. You're all together lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful. One more time. Here I am to worship. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that